Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And today we're here to talk about trust. This may sound just a bit strange, but in our industry, building trust with the project owner is a huge challenge. Not for lack of trying by the GCs, the engineering firms, or the owners, of course, but because it's just hard. On one hand, there's a DOT protecting taxpayer dollars, and on the other hand, there's a business that needs to consider safety, schedule, people, margins, and still do a good job on the promise it made to deliver a project under a certain cost and in a specific time frame. And when you throw the challenge of subsurface utilities into the mix, things get a bit difficult and very fast. So we thought it's time we sat down with someone who can share with us what the owners really care about when it comes to the challenge of subsurface utilities. So this is why we have Karl here with us today. Karl joined PennDOT back in 2003, right? I got that right, Karl?
Yes.
And he serves as a district utility administrator. His team is responsible for identifying and resolving utility conflicts on every department, highway, and bridge project, issuing permits and notices to proceed, and submitting documents for utility cost sharing and reimbursement agreements. His district advertises or awards approximately, I think you said it was 120 projects
In that area.
of varying complexities every year. Every one of them is overseen by Carl's team, doing their very best to protect the utility infrastructure and the traveling public. So, Carl, how are you doing today? How's it going?
I am I am doing fine. David, thank you so much for this opportunity. This is
It's a pleasure to have you.
exciting, and I just messaged my boss. I said, this is so cool. And again, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we were talking a bit about this before the show, but I think in our industry we need to talk a lot more about the challenges that our industry is facing, and I think there are very dominant voices in our industry talking about where we should be and what would be an ideal world of the in the challenge of subsurface utilities. But at the end of the day, there are people that are in the trenches, fighting the good fight. And I think you're one of them, and it's important to hear the voice of people as and professionals as yourself. So that's why it's a pleasure for us as well. So,
Okay.
so Carl, tell us a bit about your role. What does it mean to be a district utility administrator?
It means that there's a lot you have to know. When you start out as a utility relocation technician or whatever the title is in your specific DOT or company, you're going from someone who's learning all the laws, policies, regulations, how processes work to clear a project, how to work with the utility, how to read plans. I mean, that's a big thing. You have to know how to read the plans. So you grow up through that, and when you become the administrator, now you need to learn a lot more about the funding. I'm sorry. You have to learn
All
more
good.
about the funding and about the whole process, additional parts of the process that as a lower, as a technician or a specialist or something, you don't know because you're relying on your administrator to tell you that stuff. So, and with the joy and the pay of being an administrator, you also have the responsibility. My staff works on X number of projects. They're responsible for them. I'm responsible for all of their projects. So I'm not saying that I'm a hero or anything like that, but that's really the truth of it all. And it can be frustrating, it can be tense, but there's so many things you learn about in this job, about utilities, about different fittings, different relocation processes, you run into some really interesting situations out there in the field.
Any specific one that comes to mind?
Oh yeah, we we
Tell
had
us some ghost stories, Carl.
yeah
Let's
yeah
get into it.
we had a bridge project where the phone company had underground cable, direct buried phone cable, and they said, "Oh, they sent us a document. Those lines are cut. They're dead. Just if they're out there, pull them out of the ground, cut them off, do this, that, and the other thing." All right, so our contractor got out there, lineman pliers, went over. By the way, these wires were on the ground, above ground. How they got wiggled up
Wow.
out of the earth, I don't know. But
Yeah.
they were also wrapped around traffic signs, around the guide rail, and other above ground facilities. And you're wondering, how did they get there? Anyway, contractor grabbed his dikes, went over, cut the lines. Nope, 7 customers out of service. So
Mm,
then at the Pennsylvania One call, if something like that happens, the contractor, the department, and a host of other people need to file what's called an alleged violation report, which means that something in the one call process wasn't followed. Uh, so we ended up going to a hearing about it, and we were able to have our penalty reduced, but not eliminated because we didn't use the proper level of SUE. Well, the wires are on the ground. You can see them. So argue,
yeah.
fuss and fidget, and we were able to get the penalty reduced. But I mean, that that was just odd. They were supposed to be underground. There they are on top of the ground, and also spooled up on the ground. Just crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
And how do you even like if it's on the ground, how do you cut that? Like why is
just wire
I don't know,
cutters.
how does that yeah, so why? I guess is what I'm
Well,
asking.
well, they were in the way of the contractor. You know, these little
Yeah.
wires that were a quarter-inch wide and not even a quarter-inch thick,
Mm,
but
got
they
it.
would be in the way,
Yeah.
and they were attached to the structure, to the bridge, so they had to come out anyway. But
Got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
um, but
Yeah.
then we've also had in Pennsylvania, you're a utility and you're installing, let's say, a gas main, which then will run into the next little story, has to be uh, at least have 3 feet of cover. And there was a gas main that was exposed by our contractor. It had 2 feet of cover within our right of way, and the service lines coming off that had 1 foot of cover. All right, so it was installed incorrectly, illegally. The utility ended up, they traced that line, they replaced over a mile of pipe because they determined it was all
Wow.
had insufficient cover. That delayed the
Wow.
project like 8 months. So there's a delay
Eight
claim, which we're going to
months.
talk about as we go along through this, okay?
Wow.
And
Yeah, I want to know who ended up paying for that and how did that negotiation happen? How did they negotiate that change order? What was the feedback like? Like we don't need to talk about that specific situation, but like I think getting a glimpse of what it looks like from your side, from the owner's side, when something like that happens, I think is really interesting.
okay, well, first of all, uh, in my 20 years, I never found the hammer for us to go after a utility to have them kick in on that delay claim. I'm told that there is no hammer. We don't even have a tack hammer, even a child's toy hammer. We don't have that. So
Yeah.
I understand that we cannot go after them. Unlike our contractor, so if the contractor does not open a road by a specific date and time, we can assess roadway used or liquidated damages, which means we're penalizing the contractor for not meeting the milestone. Okay. But the
Yeah.
utilities, we cannot assign RULDs to them. So I don't get involved with determining how much the delay is, or even approving the delay, that goes on to other people with more feathers in their hat than I. So I really don't know how that's determined. It starts with the construction unit. It goes to the assistant district executive for construction, moves on to our district executive, who's in charge of the entire district. And then I believe it goes to our central office for review by a few other sub offices down there. And
But does somebody get back to you and say, hey, like, how did this get through you? How did this get by you? Like, is there like that type of internal conversation?
okay, when when the gas line project I mentioned happened, that was before we
Yeah.
started doing Sue. Okay.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
He says, I see your eyes open up. Yes.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was before we started doing Sue. So we relied on as-built. Well, as I think everyone out there in TV world here knows that uh, good as-built, let alone any as-built, are rare as hen's teeth. And anyone who knows chickens knows that hens don't have teeth. So they're very rare. Um, I
Yeah.
told you I like to keep it light, man.
Yeah,
So
yeah. As we hear that as builts are more like as ifs, as maybes, as could be's. That's what we hear about as
as
builts.
should be, but aren't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, it's a challenge getting that information, and that builds into the whole trust thing. So can
Yeah.
we trust your as-built? Can we trust that you have as-built? Can we trust that you have a system map that will accurately give us accurately? Now there's a wide open word there, but to show
Yeah.
where your line is. I used to work in the gas industry, and our plans that we took out in the field with us, every road was X feet wide. Every road, whether it was an interstate with 8 lanes or the street right outside my house, X feet wide on the plan. And the utility line was shown either on one edge of the road, the other side of the road, or dead in the middle. How can you how can you operate with that, especially if you're doing
Yeah.
markouts, right?
Yeah.
Um, I had a project down in Franklin County, Pennsylvania, where a company came out and marked out their line. I said, well, wait a minute, your mark is over here, but I see valve boxes over here. I said, the guy looked at his plan. Oh, had north oriented wrong. Had the plans misoriented. So yeah,
Amazing.
true story.
Unbelievable.
I mean, I like to think
Unbelievable.
I'm a creative writer, but I can't make that stuff up. So he had to paint
Yeah.
black what he marked out and painted it, and still he's off by 2 feet because the
Yeah.
contractor found it. That was back in my early days. So it's the trust, like you say, it's the
Yeah.
trust. We have to trust all those things. We have to trust their markouts when the contractor does their one call, their construction one call. We're going to start excavating at this point on this day. Utility goes out, marks out because they have the plans turned wrong, or we just had one where the utility went out and used dowsing rods to locate their sewer line.
Wow.
They were off by 19 and a half feet.
Wow.
However, our excavator found it on the third bucket. So,
So they were gentle when putting
yes,
that. Yeah.
no. No, they broke that very cleanly. But so you have to trust, you have to rely on good information in design and in construction. And I responded on LinkedIn to another Sioux firm. I said, who knows better where their utilities are? The old adage, right? Who knows where the utility lines are? Well, the utility owner. Wrong. Okay, so I said, actually, the supervisor knows where they are, or the excavator, which I call the pipeline locator. Um, so,
I like that.
um, and the person that I was commenting to said, no, actually, only the Sioux excavator, only the excavator knows where the pipe actually is, because there have been
Yeah.
mismarks by the Sioux providers. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so I was corrected. That's fine. But you
Yeah.
have all that trust over everything. whether it's underground electric, telephone, water, sewer, gas, petroleum, pipeline, whatever. You have to rely on everybody for good data
But
coming and
how do
going.
you, yeah, it's like it's such a difficult task because we're trying to create different levels of utility data throughout the project. So just like we're in designs, we're looking at SU level data, and when we get to excavation, we're looking we're looking at locators data, like we're looking at spray paint.
Hmm.
And and I think at different stages in the project, we're creating these different levels of data. But then how do you, from the owner's perspective, how do you orchestrate that, and um, how do you assess the risk of a project when you don't have all the information up front? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the one of the challenges. You have to go back to your history with a specific utility. All right, one utility
What do
they
you mean
never
by
mark
that?
out, right? Or
Hmm.
their markouts are always wrong. So, what level do you have there? There's a high
Yeah.
risk with them. But then you have others, and we do have a lot of our utilities. We work with a lot of utilities in our district. We have 8 counties in our district, and a lot of utilities in them. And I have to say, we probably have an excellent working relationship with 97%. And then the balance is iffy to, oh my word, we're working with them. Okay. I think everybody out in TV world here or computer world, whatever you want to call it, has knows who their problem children are.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
where the real risk comes in. And then there's you and I talked about this before, those that hide behind, I shouldn't say hide behind, who use Homeland Security. Oh, we can't
Mm,
provide that information,
yeah.
Homeland Security. But by
I
the
know
way,
what all you mean.
I need a permit to go in your right of way. Here's the plan showing where our line will be. What?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
did Homeland Security go?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. We're also pretending like the utility owners, they're the only ones that have the data. Like that,
Yeah.
it's like it's easy enough to just walk along the street and see which manhole has which logo on it, or which like
Yeah.
it's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like
I
the
know.
information's out there. So, and I think one of the I can't remember who said this to us, but we have hundreds of thousands of utility strikes across the US a year. And how many bad actor incidents do we have? So, like, when you look at risk mitigation, and our entire industry is about risk mitigation, what is the biggest risk? What is the biggest risk? I think it's the simplest question that we should be asking.
Oh, the biggest risk, of course, is during construction. All right. So, all right, let's back this up a little bit. We do SU, right? We do level B,
Yeah,
4,000 feet each for water, sewer, gas. Okay. There's
yeah,
nobody else underground out there. So we do 12,000 feet of level B.
yeah.
And then we ID that and we look at the work we're doing, cross pipe for storm pipes and things like that, or whatever we're doing. And we ID conflicts, potential conflicts. So we call out level A's, test holes at those points. All right, so now we got good information, right? How many people out there in TV world here don't see the level B information plotted onto their plans that go to the contractor for bid? How many times does that not happen? That's something I'm starting to investigate now. Uh, Not that I want to get anybody in
You're saying
trouble.
that the contractor doesn't get the best utility data? Is that basically what you're saying? That the project is created?
It it has happened. It has
How does that
happened.
happen?
Oh,
Go, that
there's
sounds very like I don't know. I don't even know how to think about something like that.
okay, you need to come work for me.
Next
Okay.
time I'm in
So, yeah,
Pennsylvania, I'll
okay.
drop by the office. Yeah,
Let me know. I'll take you out to lunch and we'll go over everything. But
we'll do. Yeah,
we
yeah,
and I know you come to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania all the time. I
of course.
uh it it happens. I mean, if it's an in-house project where all the design and everything is happening in-house, there it depends on the level of experience with the project manager. Okay. Is the project
Yeah,
manager relatively new or an old timer? Old, not age, but time in the service. Um, and or is it a consultant handling utility coordination and design? You see more often that the consultant is plotting that data onto the plan. Okay, because a
yeah,
lot of times on in-house projects, I'm talking like resurfacing jobs. It's a simple resurfacing job. That's a misnomer right there, simple. But
yeah.
uh, so it's a resurfacing job. We don't do survey on them. Just use historic plans, and sometimes the historic plans contain utility information, and sometimes, all right, so the sometimes is diluting your information as you go along. Sometimes the historic utilities are actually shown on the current plans, but are they right? So we send them out for verification to the utilities. All right. Utilities sometimes give respond to that. No, our line is not there anymore. That one's dead. We relocated to the other side of the road. Okay, that's good information. Sometimes we get that, but oftentimes not. Again, we don't have a hammer to go after the utility. Thou shalt supply this information. We don't have that hammer. We can hound, bother, pester, and bug, but we don't always get that.
I
So,
think though, but I think what bothers me the most is that we whoever it is hired a sue firm and they put all that data together, but then what you're saying to me is that that data that didn't get to the excavator, and then I'm thinking to myself, like, is it possible that we're creating data that isn't actionable for the people that are boots on the ground?
what do you mean by actionable?
I mean that they're not able to use it in a way that is going to prevent damage, that is going to prevent the utility strike.
Right, right. I often I've told the project managers, both in-house and consulting, to plot the level B on there and to also upload into one of our many programs, but the one that the contractor will see when doing the bid, upload the SUE results into that program so the contractor will be able to look at it, right?
Yeah,
Because that'll have the test hole information, it'll have the level B, all that stuff on there.
yeah.
But I want our construction plans to show the level B designating that was done because that is the most current and quite likely most accurate information that we have. But why it's not getting on there is I don't know. We spend an egregious amount of money. My boss Michelle is on the call, and she's probably rolling her eyes because I
Can
say
attest to it.
egregious
Yeah.
amount of money for Sue, and we're not supplying that information to anyone. It's like I know something that you don't know, Mr. Contractor. All right, we shouldn't be like that. We should be
Yeah.
sharing that information, and that's something that my boss and I are working on to improve. And PennDOT, my district, cannot be the only organization in the country or maybe around the world that has this issue. Uh,
Of course
doesn't
not.
make it right. It doesn't make it right, but it happens.
No, it's reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a few comments here in the chat. So one is from Brenda. She said, "Carl, thank you so much for the comment on the levels not being shown on the design plans. I just should suggest a law change to PA 811 on writing that requirement into the law. and she suggests file an AVR to the PUC for enforcement in PA. So that's from Brenda. You can always count on Brenda to
Yeah.
bring up how we can use legislation to
Yep.
protect utilities.
Yeah.
And then Albert says here, each step of design is an opportunity for things to get overlooked, layers turned off, or data not updated correctly. The design to construction handoff needs a liaison to ensure utility data lives through construction to protect the effort done during design. And he adds at the end, we share your pain, Carl, unfortunately, with a smile.
Yeah. Yeah. And first, Brenda, hi. I haven't seen you in a while. Nice to have you on board. Good information, good suggestion. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me through
We'll make that
LinkedIn.
happen.
Yes.
Legislation happening on the podcast.
Yeah,
Unbelievable. I love
absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
I
So,
love
or
it.
you can reach out to me if you still have my PennDOT email address. So reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Um,
Yeah.
and
So
Albert also provided some good information there. I mean, I'm sure if you talk to 40 people, you're going to have 50 different responses to everything that was just discussed.
yeah. Carl, can you tell us maybe a bit about, is there, what type of relationship does the project owner have with the utility owners? Like, we know, I think we talk about it a lot on the show, of the relationship between the civil engineers and the general contractors with the project owner and the challenges that it's the utility owner, excuse me, and the challenges that there are there. But how does that relationship look like from your point of view?
Well, my unit works very hard to create good relationships with all those utilities. Like I say, 8 counties in our district, hundreds of literally hundreds and hundreds of utilities that we work with, from municipal
Wow.
utilities all the way up to the big boys like the power companies and things like that.
Yeah.
So we work very hard on our relationship. And like I say, we have good relationship with almost all of them. And even those that aren't as sterling a relationship as the others, it's still a good relationship. It just needs to be worked on a little more. But it goes back to getting good information from them and the cooperation. Not that they don't want to cooperate, but maybe they don't have anything to provide, because you have utility companies that are being bought and sold like Bitcoins, right? They're just, being bought and sold,
Yeah.
merged, acquired, name
Yeah.
change. And every
That
time it
data is
seems,
lost. Those
yeah,
as-built are lost every time there's a merger and acquisition. Yeah.
and so does the information from the people that end up either being assisted out the door to help them find new employment, all right,
Yeah.
let go, or people that say, I can't work here now, and they leave. So there's a lot of information that they're taking. Well, Ralph that used to work here, he retired, and he knew where every manhole, every inch of that pipe went.
Yeah.
Can you call him back? No. So, that's that brain drain that you lose, whether it's a retirement or somebody leaving. And then it's just, now you're working with basically a new company, but with the same players, but the new company has different processes that they use for things. So it's difficult uh, to develop and grow a relationship with some, because all you need is one oh crap to happen, and there some of that relationship sours on
Yeah.
both ends. It could be something from us, it could be something from the utility.
Yeah.
Um, but it's difficult. I don't know. Did I answer your question, or I just sit here and
No, I
talk?
think it's yeah, no, it was I think that what I'm interested in is the um a lot of times when we talk to engineers and civil engineers and general contractors, sorry, they feel like they have to beg for the utility owner to pass on utility data, and it's always kind of the generic response of "We'll get back to you in the next 90 days," and If that happens, they're lucky, and nobody cares about their project schedule or letting schedule. Like the utility owner doesn't care about that. Um, and I think that I was wondering if the uh, you can use the force of the leverage of the project owner to get what needs to get the utility information that we need to get for the projects, um, because you have that mandate, so to speak.
Sometimes we just have to sit on a utility, call them constantly, constantly.
Yeah.
Hey, you said you'd have it to us by Friday. Maybe we should have asked you which Friday. Can you get it to us this Friday, the 14th? You know,
Yeah.
so uh, it it's difficult. It's difficult to nail them down because, for instance, every utility, once they put their facilities in the ground, they're not done working on them. They have things to do with them, repairs or add customers or something like that. So they have their own capital projects. They have their own maintenance projects that they're doing. And here comes along a DOT. Hey, I have a project here
Yeah.
and we're going to impact you. Oh my gosh. Well, to weave our project into what they need to do can be a challenge for them, especially the smaller companies. The I'll say, well, just the smaller companies. I'll leave it at that because they're swamped and they're understaffed. So it,
And in those departments specifically as well.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the, I can't say it's a challenge loud enough or use large enough font to tell you that it's a challenge. It's we're pretty good at it, but then you just have some utilities that are so slow in responding. I mean, I tell my guys when they retire, they should get a license to be a dentist because all they did was pull teeth their whole time here to get information. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, doing extractions. Yeah.
So no magic bullets here, I guess.
No, sir.
Um, we have a question here from Dan. He asks, Carl, what actions would you make as a project owner to reduce the contingency you allocate for a project?
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing. What was that last part? To do what?
To reduce the contingency you allocate for a project. So how much budget do we put aside, or how can we reduce the budget that we put aside for the expected dealings with change orders that come with utility risk?
Oh, and construction.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, I'm not sidestepping. I'm just being honest with you. I don't know how that's determined. I believe that's handled actually on a case by case basis. Um, we had utilities delay a project over a year, and I don't know how that's worked into the program. Uh, Once the project is let and awarded, um, I'm kind of out of the loop on things. So I and my staff, unless a problem arises, then my staff has to get involved. But how a contingency or a dollar amount is uh, provided for an overrun like that, I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Yeah, I can, but I can add and I can give a bit of numbers, and then you can feel free to reach out afterwards. Um, that we know, and these are industry averages, right? What I'm gonna say now is that the cost of subsurface condition change orders approaches about 1% of a public agency's total budget for new construction. And this was found in a research done, I think, in 2016. I can send it to you afterwards. We also know that the average percent of the total project's budget that's allocated to utility contingency specifically is about 4%, and that's of research that Doug Ransberg did in 2021. So it doesn't answer your question about what can be done to reduce that contingency, but I think it eventually gets into how can we create predictability in a project, and if we're even able to do that in regards to utilities. So, which I
Well,
think, by the way, is a great question, Carl. Like, how do you create predictability from your perspective around utilities?
I think one thing that um, needs to happen, I'm going back on a previous conversation today, is to take that level B data and put that on the plans that the contractor sees, make that part of the bid package, right? So when the contractor's out there and puts in their one call ticket before they start excavation, the utility comes out and marks out their line. Take the plan that has the level B and match that up with the mark out. Is it close? Is the mark out accurate, or is it, sorry, north was facing the other direction and the mark out is on the wrong side of the road? So it
Are people
I've
doing
not
that?
worked. Do they look at those?
I've never heard of anyone compare level B and level A's with some markouts.
I don't know if anyone does, but it seems to me in
They
my little
should.
mind that it's an awfully decent idea, right? I mean,
Probably, yeah.
yeah, I like markouts. I don't trust them just because of what I've seen. I
Yeah,
haven't seen everything out there in the world, but I've seen some pretty bad markouts.
yeah,
Uh, Both after it's hit and when I was out working before when I used to do road work. So, um, yeah, I think we spend all this egregious amount of money, right, for Sue to get level B at least done, and then nobody's comparing a markout to the plan that
yeah,
because the Sue plan is signed and sealed by a licensed surveyor and probably a PE. So there's a lot of weight behind these what was plotted on the plan from the level B. So I would rely on that before I rely on a markout.
yeah, yeah. Carl, let's talk a bit about getting in front of the letting schedule. How does that happen? How do we make that happen?
Mm, okay. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
All
Um,
good.
the It all starts back in early in design. Starts in early design. You're doing your scoping. Is the scoping is the scope going to creep? All right, it's just a simple resurfacing project. Oh, 6 months later, oh, Carl, we're replacing all the storm pipe in the project and a whole bunch of the inlet boxes that the storm pipe is connected to, and we're going to replace and upgrade the guide rail. Well, that wasn't in the original scope. Yeah, but we got talking to maintenance and they want to do this. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So what was a simple resurfacing, which I say doesn't exist, um, is now ballooned into, well, now we need to do level B, level A, probably level A, but definitely level B to see where everything is. And do you need to extend the guide rail that 500 feet? Or was there a reason why it was only back here at its current location? Why are you extending? So can we eliminate part of a potential conflict? So it goes back to the birth of the project and as it learns to walk, crawl and walk and everything like that. So try to control your creep. Creep happens for many reasons, and most of them are very valid. But just because, well, the guide rail is old and we have a little bit extra money, we're going to replace the guide rail and extend it a little bit.
yeah,
All right, so you have that. It, and as you progress through, go through the final design phase, and you're working with the utilities, we have a system that's called Utility Relocation Management System, or URMS. The utilities pronounce it ERMS, which I think is humorous. But in that, we list all the conflicts as we see them. Okay.
yeah,
From here to here, you have to replace 8 poles. Here to here, you have to replace your pipe. Well, the
Yeah,
utilities look at these conflicts and they may determine, no, we're not affected. Fine, great.
yeah,
But then they say, well, wait a minute, based on our records that we never gave you, PennDOT, our pipe is in a different location than you're shown on the plan, and it's actually only 3 feet deep. Your guide rail post is going to go right through it. If you had provided those plans to us when we requested them, okay, so you get what's going on here. So we have project scope creep, and then late in the game information from the utilities, and or what has happened often is talking with the gas company. Oh yeah, we're not affected, and then you're in construction, and gas company calls. Hey, our marketing group just decided that we're going to extend the main 400 feet in the same alignment through your project, and we're going to throw in 200 services. Uh, the construction isn't going to like that because now that's in conflict with other things, perhaps, but it can also build in that delay for the contractor. So
yeah,
construction, we go to construction, will you authorize this? Yes or no? Depending on what it is, yeah. But for something a long job like that, they'll often say, no, you have to wait for the paving moratorium to expire before you do that. So things spread kind of like mold.
yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me, do you feel sometimes that we're getting the relevant utility data too late in the game? When I say relevant utility data, I'm talking about quality level B and A. Like it feels like sometimes we get this data after the important decisions have been made.
From the utilities, yes. Sometimes I always tell the project managers, do sue early as possible, at least level A. And then when you get your plans that we're going to send to the utilities to uh, for them to work on, let's look at that and see if we need to do test holes. So do it early, do it early, do it early.
Yeah,
Happens, doesn't, I'm not going to talk out of school. Okay. But I know there are times we get information from the utilities late in the game. Like I say, either a marketing thing, they're adding on new customers, or a housing development is being built down the road. We have to get gas to them, or whatever the utility is.
yeah,
Or, you know what, we just decided we're going to replace our 6-inch water main and put in a 12-inch water main because now we can supply hydrants. Why didn't
yeah,
you tell us this early on? Because when we send the verification plans out to a utility, we ask them 4 questions, and I hope I remember them all. Do you have facilities in the project limits? Yes or no? If you have facilities in the project limits, do you have any plans currently to upgrade or improve your system or add new lines? If you don't have facilities in the project limits, do you have plans to add lines through the project during construction? And no, I don't remember them all. So there's a fourth one, but I can't recall what it is.
I
But
forgive you.
yeah, thank you, Father. Yeah. So
No problem.
so yeah, we get those questions answered. Whether they're right or not, I don't know. Oh, what's this popping up on my computer? I'm sorry, let me close this.
All good.
Yeah, I know that's coming up. I'll dismiss it. Okay, so um, we get that information late in the game, often, and it's very frustrating. I don't know how you can corral that. Uh, Even taking all the utilities out to breakfast, and hey, let's work together. Thanks for breakfast. See ya. You know, right? It's
Yeah,
like you say, begging, and sometimes that even doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's a very challenging position, whether you're the administrator a utility administrator, or you work for the utility administrator, or you're a consultant doing utility coordination, it's a very challenging role. Very challenging role.
I I'm trying to look into the future here and try and think, uh, are the are we seeing a path for the utility owners to adapt to the new, I don't even know how to call it, the new world of 2023? Like, do you think that's going to happen? Are you seeing like those signs of change?
With some utilities, yes. Um, and those are the ones that have historically worked well with us, and they're improving their system. Example, we had a power company when I started in 2003. That was an electric company that, okay, here's our relocation design. We'll get out there someday, maybe, to complete our relocations. So they held us up in construction. Regime change at that company. And uh, now we're getting things done prior to the project. A lot of work is done prior. A lot of it's still done coordinated or restrictive, but they're doing more prior work because they want to get in and out, and then we leave them alone, right? So they're doing. So that company has looked at reducing their costs, because then um, getting their relocations done early is also controlling their costs, because jeepers, aren't prices just going up all the time, right?
Yeah,
So the sooner they can get that done, the more they can control their costs, both for material and labor. And
yeah.
it's they we have utilities, a couple of utilities that are very forward thinking, but it's usually the larger ones.
You know, that's the second time I've heard that this week. That if you get in front of the work, in front of the change orders, you can do a lot of good in your own end. Like, we were talking to a GC the other week, a very big GC, and we were trying to figure out why. Um, Well, they were having trouble with being surprised by change orders in the middle of the job, right? Like they find a utility, they need to move it, things happen. But I was like asking, it's a design bid build project, and I was asking, but why does it matter to you? Like, you're not liable. Like, the project owner is going to pay for that. And then they said to me something that really was interesting to me. They said, look, that may be true, but I am going to have a team, materials, equipment that's going to be on that site that I need to think what I'm going to do is for the next 4 weeks. So even though they're paying for it, I now have more overhead that I need to deal with that I would have much rather planned for if I had the information up front.
Hmm.
So, and I think that, like, often in the industry, we think about the liability of who's gonna, like, we're finger pointing. Who's gonna pay for this? Who's gonna be responsible for this? Who's gonna assume
Hmm.
liability? And I think that, like, what that conversation, what you said now I think reminds us that it's not just about who's gonna pay for it. It's also about uh, I think the term I'm going to use is what's a collateral damage when something like that happens? Like, what are the actions that I need to take, not only from a paying perspective or work perspective, but what's the overhead that's created for me as an organization, whether I'm the utility owner or the contractor or whoever that is, when we have surprises with subsurface utilities. What
Yeah,
do you
well
think of
then,
that?
yeah, well, there's also the thing too where the utility had their contractor, often anymore it's a contractor, because the utilities are downsizing construction staff, right? So they're using contractors more often. Well, they go in
Yeah,
and they do their work prior or whatever. Now,
yeah,
oh geez, something happened during the project owner's construction. Now the utility has to find, perhaps they don't have a contractor available right now.
yeah.
So they have to wait a week or two. So,
Yeah.
you know, that availability works into controlling their cost as well, because they may have to pay uh, a ramp up fee or whatever for for a contractor to get pulled off another job to go in and address this job.
Yeah.
So they have to do that. I'm sorry, I forgot your question.
No, I was just
Sorry.
asking. I was just asking what you thought about the comment that you made. But um, we normally like when we come to we've got a few more minutes of the episode. But normally I like bringing it towards what do you think should be the biggest take for a contractor or civil engineering firm or even a firm from this episode? Like, what should they think is the most important thing they should know about the project owner's point of view when it comes to utilities?
Okay, avoid sorry, avoid second relocations, avoid um, uh, construction delays. And how do you do that? You look at your project and you look at your schedule. You look at your design. Are you showing all the necessary information in there? Um, because I've seen we put a project out for advertisement. We just did one recently. And yesterday I saw, I think, 13 bid questions come in on that project. So that tells
Wow.
me there's information missing in the bid
Yeah.
package, or they're just looking for clarification on something, which means then maybe it wasn't written correctly. So then it makes you wonder,
Mm.
you look at the plan, could that have been interpolated from the plan and you'd have your answer? But so you want to include as much information as you can on the plans and in the specifications. Quantities, are the quantities right? There was a project a couple of years ago. It was, I think, 5 miles of resurfacing, and they had like 9 yards of pavement on the
Yeah.
tabulation sheet. For 5 miles of resurfacing, 9 yards of pavement? No, somebody copied and pasted and didn't make the change. So there's all those things. Then you have to look at, of course, what goes on in my world. Did we accurately identify all of the conflicts? Were the conflict resolutions shown on the plans properly? Um, were they shown at all, actually? Um,
Mm. Yeah.
so there's a lot of things with that. So it all goes back to QA, QC through the design phase up to advertisement. Now you get out to construction, and construction says we need to cut this bank a little more. So that utility pole or a conduit bank or whatever that was set as designed now has to drop 2 feet. Well, to drop 2 feet of a conduit bank, it's not just at that point or even a 10-foot spread. You have to extend the utilities excavation back more so they can get that drop as
Yeah.
they need to. So that's a lot of cost for the utility. And maybe they weren't eligible for reimbursement the first time. Now with the second move, they're going to get 100%, but that doesn't mean that, oh boy, we're going to go in and do this for you real quick. They get there when they get there often. So that adds up to delay claim. So it's a QA/QC from birth to burial for the project. And burial is when they close the project.
Yeah. Two more questions here, and everyone here in the chat, feel free to ask more until we're out of time. So, first question is from Guy. Does PennDOT require utility coordination for all projects?
We need to do a level of utility coordination. Okay, so we're going to resurface an interstate project. Going to go in, put 1.5 inches of overlay on the roadway. There should be no utilities, just
Yeah,
at
in
the
that end.
top of
Yeah,
that. Okay, so
yeah,
we look at those projects and we say, all right, there's no utility involvement here because they should all be at least 3 feet deep right?
Yeah.
Like I said about the highway law. So we're putting 1.5 inch pavement down. There's the level of involvement is nil. So we just cleared the project with a special. But then you get into, those are the easy cheesies. So you move beyond the easy cheesies all the way up to the OMG, what are we going to do here? Projects. The level of utility coordination is uh, tied directly to the utility complexity on the project. Not always the project complexity itself, but the utility complexity. Because we might have a pipeline going under the roadway. They don't want vibratory rolling 50 feet on either side of their crossing. All right, so we have to take that into account. So there's a lot of things that we have to look at and work with and interpret the level of involvement the department has with the utilities. Some is, I mean, almost literally down in the ditch with them, making determinations on things, and others are resurfacing an interstate project with 1.5 inch of overlay. So, and that
Yeah.
applies too to the proper level of SUE.
Yeah. A comment from Brenda here again. Can you tell everyone about the Utility Highway Liaison Committee, UHLC, meetings at the Turnpike HQ in Harrisburg, PA every quarter?
Okay, the next meeting is in October. Utilities and consultants are authorized to attend. We don't check badges or anything like that, but we talk about a lot of things at the UHLC meetings. We talk about changes in the highway occupancy permit law, changes in both for permits that my unit issues or that the permit unit issues. Permit unit does not issue anything involving a highway project. We talk about SUE, we talk about OSHA requirements for crane safety. There's a lot of topics we go over. One of them is the double wood poles that are out there. New pole set, the old pole's still behind. Nobody's attached to it. Well, that pole could stay there for years. So we're working up a team to uh, identify these locations to have those poles pulled because they could be uh, impact the traffic. Someone could hit it, in other words, or the pole will rot and fall. So that creates a problem. So the UHLC is a very diverse group of people. Like I say, consultants, department personnel, and turnpike personnel attend. It's a good meeting. It's a good group, and we go over a whole lot of things, many of which I can't recall right now because that one came out of left field. Thank you, Brenda. But it's there's a lot of good information exchanged there.
Okay. So come to the end of this session, this live episode. I want to thank everyone here for joining. I think at peak we had about 15 people here. And I want to thank you, Carl, for bringing your perspective, your point of view. I think it was really valuable for me, and of course for the people here in the chat who've been tuning in. To everyone here, stay tuned for our next session. We're going to be doing more and more of these. And of course, we'd like to get your feedback on who we should bring on, what topics you want us to discuss. There's a lot to talk about in our industry, fortunately. So we're looking forward to doing just that. So Carl, my friend, thank you again. I really appreciate you joining us today.